Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. It's going to be straight into the action for this video as I want to highlight an elite specialist game I recently played on stream. So you already know what pack I'm going to pick. For my opponent, it's probably going to be Giant SPEC here. It's the only pack he had available that actually has chaff. It's got a good slab of hit points and a very useful perk, especially in a defensive situation. This might already tell you something, but yes, I will be playing some aggro here, starting with the steel balls and the crawlers. This makes the most sense. I've got a good pack matchup as well. Crawlers is really good into Fang and Stormcaller, and steel balls is good into Stormcaller as well. I've got that speed, and I even may be able to get within this red zone, meaning that his Stormcallers won't be able to hit my units. So here, I'm going to be going for a symmetrical setup. The reason for this is that I know I have a good matchup, and I think that I can win in a symmetrical setup here. I don't need to leverage basically all my units being on one side to be able to get the tower. I think I can manage that either way. And so that's what you'll see me do. This also adds a little bit more pressure, right? Because it prevents him from being able to stack on one side. He will have to deal with both sides running in. Now what you see him do is buy 2 sets of crawlers and sell out of a Stormcaller pack. Once I see this, I will already know, okay, round 2 he wants to buy a Vulcan. This is a very common play, especially when the opponent is Giant SPEC and can unlock those units for free. And what's more, I'm elite specialist, so all the crawlers I'm buying are level 2, which means they are really strong against enemy chaff and level 1 arclights, but not so much against Vulcans, and it might even allow his Vulcans to level quickly, which might make it easier for the Vulcans to kill something like the steel balls. You'll see me here prioritize chaff, again, because I know that this chaff is very, very powerful, and I would really doubt he would be able to deal with it. I also wasn't completely sure if he would be buying arclights, which he doesn't. Again, the crawler matchup isn't great for that, and he is Giant SPEC, so instead he wants to get directly to the better version of chaff clear, being the Vulcan. And with that, I should be fine in this first round. Even though I don't have chaff clear, my chaff basically becomes my chaff clear because I have the stronger chaff. You can see here the crawlers are having no issue whatsoever. The right side is a bit slower because my opponent had more chaff on that side. But I do manage to get in on the left side of the board, get the debuff, and now we make our way over to those enemy units. Just got to clean up those final fangs, got to clean up the Stormcallers, and that's a pretty successful first round, about as I would expect it to go considering our starting packs. So round 2, this is kind of the big moment right now. I've seen he wants to sell out of this. I know he has a lot more money than I do. He'll be able to sell out of this, get up to 700 this turn, which means he can easily buy a giant and still get a second deployment of something on the board, which would have to be chaff. And for me here, I will have to get some chaff clear on the board now, because even though I was able to get away with it first round, I certainly won't be able to get away with it on this second round. And yet we see the Vulcan here being purchased. Still 300 resources left available. The good thing for me is he doesn't have money for 2 Vulcans, so he can't actually deal with the left side of the board just yet. And that might allow me to get a win here, even though it's a big power spike for him. Gets Scorch immediately and adds crawlers here on the back of his left tower. That's very scary. And as soon as I see this, I will likely be abandoning my steel balls, because I don't think it's a good matchup anymore. Steel balls can be good against Vulcan, but it kind of depends on how high level your steel balls are, whether or not your opponent can easily get their hands on Vulcan and get their hands on these type of techs. But when he already has a Vulcan down on round 2 with Scorch, and I know a second one is coming next turn, I really don't think, you know, the steel balls are going to have a good time here. The level 1s certainly won't. I am elite, so I could buy level 2s, but I'm not sure I like the idea that much. You can see here on the right side, these steel balls are going to get absolutely burnt to a crisp. Same thing for the crawlers, and sadly at level 2, those do give away a good amount of EXP. I buy 2 arclights here, by the way, as my chaff clear. Make sure to position them in front of those fang packs. Left side still gets in, as he wasn't able to buy that other Vulcan. but he will be next turn. Luckily for me, some of my steel balls are smart enough to go for the tower here, get that debuff, and maybe with the debuff we can get a good lock on and kill this Vulcan. Let's see. We're killing some fangs, but now we're getting the lock on. The debuff is still in full force, and we do manage to get rid of that Vulcan. Very nice. Steel balls get enough here for a level up as well. And I didn't see... Okay, the Vulcan doesn't level up yet, but I think it is actually quite close, even though that was level round 2. Yeah, gets up to 1800 out of a required 2200. Crazy, crazy stuff, but that's kind of how things go when you're elite. Great item shows up for him here. Nano repair kit's fantastic on these giants. And I will need some serious DPS to be able to deal with this. I go for the nano repair kit as well, deciding to put it onto my steel balls, level them. You'll see me sell out of the level 1 pack on the right side because I know those won't be doing anything except feeding EXP. And that leaves me with 700, which means that I can buy 2 300 cost units. And in this situation, I know my opponent is going to buy another Vulcan. That seems like the most logical thing to do. Go symmetrical. It was able to deal with the board on this side last time, so it should be able to deal with the board on the left side as well this turn. However, he does lack anti-air. He does buy more fangs, but most of those should be dying at the start of the round thanks to the arc lights. And if I stack one side here with Phoenixes, I should have plenty of damage to be able to get rid of the Vulcans. That's the nice thing about Elite. Your units are very expensive, but your 200 costs at level 2 have like the benefit of having this increased DPS, right? The difference between level 2 Phoenix and level 1 Phoenix is literally double the stats. So you see here, I have absolutely no issue whatsoever getting rid of that level 1 Vulcan. Now, it does pick up enough EXP killing those level 2 crawlers to level up, which means it will also get twice the amount of hit points if he decides to level it up. But so far, we're successful. The fangs are on the outside, which is quite nice for me. It means I don't get stuck on them and I can get rid of that second Vulcan as well. All my Phoenixes remain alive. And I still have this arc light as well to be able to help me out. And chaff clear. I get a debuff. Arclight makes its way over. And so we take another round. So far, so good. And we'll enter round 4, which should be 3 units, as we haven't seen them in round 2 or 3. There they are. Farseer, Scorpion, Wraith, and Rhino. Now in this scenario, Farseer looks decent. Definitely the best thing for him, I would say. It gives him that anti-air unit. And it's just generally a very powerful mid-game unit. Doesn't really have any bad stats whatsoever. And I decided to go for Rhino because I think that it's the one thing he'll struggle with. I can get these Rhinos, and I do run armor, which will significantly reduce the damage taken by the Vulcans. The Farseer, they're very good, but they're not made to kill super tanky units. And I kind of knew he was going to pick that. It was the most obvious thing into the Phoenixes. I decided to pick up another Phoenix on the left, another Rhino as well. I sell out of the steel balls and repurpose that nano repair kit onto one of my Rhinos. I double stack here. Basically put a Rhino in front of each of my Phoenixes as the front line. Make sure that those survive. And the nice thing here as well is it might allow some of my crawlers to run in, as the Vulcans should get target locked onto these for quite some time. And you can see on the left, this Rhino barely takes any damage. It's mostly coming from the Farseer, if anything. On the right side, it does take some damage, especially because that Vulcan is leveled. But still, it blocks 120 damage out of the 300 that Vulcan deals. And one Rhino goes down, but the other ones stay alive, and that's a massive turn on round 4, sending my opponent down to 2.1k. Round 5, and Barrier shows up for my opponent, another good giant item. He doesn't hesitate to pick it. And for me, it's a pretty easy redeployment. Having redeployment available with those Rhinos is certainly useful, especially when my opponent as Giant SPEC can get these melters unlocked pretty easily. And so we see 2 melters hit the board. I decide to range my arc lights in this scenario, which I already did last turn, by the way. No, I didn't. I added another arc lights to the flank last turn. I decided to range them this turn because I do need to make sure that I can keep up with his chaff. He doesn't have that much, but I need to clear the path so that my phoenixes can get lock-ons early because there's a lot of hit points to chew through. Now my opponent decides to go for a 3rd melter even on round 5, which is quite a lot. Sells a Farseer to be able to afford it. And I decide to move one of my rhinos here onto the left side, as I was expecting him to buy something to deal with these rhinos. And so I'm putting the rhino where there wasn't one last turn, hoping that that'll be able to avoid one of the beams. Rhino here will be going down relatively fast. My opponent even going for the oil this turn. And sadly, my rhinos all end up dying. My crawlers burn up. But the left side looks pretty good, I have to say. Can we get in, though? Vulcan gets rid of my final crawlers on the left side, and though the arc lights are doing well, they don't quite have the DPS to kill things like the Farseer, let alone these giants. And I do manage to get rid of most of the chaff, but that's 4 giants left alive and a Farseer. That's a lot of damage going my way as my opponent strikes back on round 5. We enter round 6 and 3 units show up. Fortress, Scorpion, Sandworm, and Wraith. Now, Wraith doesn't look too good. Neither does Scorpion, I have to say. The melters would kind of destroy those. Same thing for Fortress. So really, it's either pick the Scorpion and sell as it's worth the most, or get the Sandworm. In this instance, I decide to go for Sandworm, because even though he has melters, he needs to pin this down. It needs to stay above ground, because if it's able to re-burrow, then it will break the melting point link. And so what you'll see me do here is use the mobile beacon that I'll buy from the right tower to beacon this basically like around his chaff and prevent this from getting stuck on chaff for too long. My opponent goes for Wraith and tries to go for a cheeky debuff here. I decide to sell out of one of my rhinos and I use the redeployments to move one of my stronger rhinos onto that flank here. And that should pull most of his chaff, which should allow my phoenixes to get in, which will now have range as well as charge shots for that extra damage. And my opponent levels all of his giants, or almost all of, well no, all of them, and adds another melter here on the inside, so going full symmetrical. But what that does mean is that his flanks are still wide open, and he's not really dealing with these flank arc lights, which are just getting to pull and chaff clear to their heart's desire. And you can see what I mean here, right? Worm does get locked, melters do big damage, but they don't manage to lock it down for long enough. Wraith is still making its way over, but it got hit by one of the missiles that I had there to prevent this kind of debuff from happening. And so I managed to get rid of all my opponent's units. The Rhino is very successful with its pull. The Phoenixes are simply destroying those giants. And so now my opponent is down to 294 as we enter round 7. Orbital Bombardment is available. Very likely that he picks that up. Great spell against air units. I can't do much against it. Enhancement module available too, though. And that is a very, very nice item for Giant Specialist. But we'll have to skip it for the Orbital here. For me, Enhancement module is not that amazing. It's hard to get levels, although I do get a lot here. But I don't really want to sell my units in this scenario. At least not the ones that I can level up. My opponent sells out of the Wraith, which I kind of expect, and I decide to move my Rhino here onto the left side. I was expecting perhaps a Melter to defend the flank, which is why I add a level 2 pack of Crawlers to still keep that pull, because I think it was quite successful and it opened up the pathway for my, my main units. And I decide to move the Rhino onto the left side, not necessarily thinking that he would add a Melter or something there, and maybe I would be successful. I sell out of the other Rhino that was still on the front lines, and we use the beacon here to go for the right tower this time. As you can see, there's still no chaff in the middle, so my worm should be able to get quite far. Opponent here goes for fortresses, however, with anti-air. Pretty strong tech against phoenixes, but will it be enough? Maybe, in combination with the orbital, it might be very successful. I do have energy shield available for the next turn if I want to. And here I'm making sure that I get temp range, temp speed, get the tower buffs. And I decide to add EMP to my arc lights. Reason for this is that I was kind of expecting range on the melting points, and EMP is very strong against really all of his techs right now. Getting rid of that Scorch is lovely. Getting rid of the range on the melting points means my Phoenixes have the range advantage. Getting rid of the anti-air protects my Phoenixes. You see one salvo going off here, but I get the debuff just in time, so the damage isn't quite high. My Rhino actually doesn't manage to get in, and it doesn't die. And even my Sandworm, it seems, manages to survive with that beacon. And so with that, it's a very quick 7-rounder on Elite Specialist, beating Giant Specialist. This was a very nice game. I think I played it quite well. I think the key thing here is identifying what my opponent wanted to go for. So expecting that Vulcan to show up, making sure that I sell out of the units that would just be feeding XP, instead converting their resources into, well, Phoenixes in this case, realizing that his anti-air was quite weak if he wanted to go for those giants early. And then after that, it was all about abusing the flanks, realizing that he kind of overcommitted to melting points here, at least melting points that are all on the front portion of his board, meaning that his flanks are quite weak. And yeah, because of that, I managed to get a nice tempo win in here. I think the Arclight positioning is crucial as well. Managing to pull the outsides here. This Arclight can deal with this flank pack and the crawler pack in the back, as well as pulling some of the chaff behind the tower. Same thing over here, and then these Arclights are perfectly in front of the Fangs, and that allows me to get the Phoenixes in. Charge Shot is important here as well. It manages to deal, or it increases the damage by a whopping 175%. You can see these level 3 Phoenixes here deal 25,000 damage a pop, and that is going to be plenty to deal with these giants. The worm play was nice too, realizing that that was the only thing I could make use of, and trying to get into these parts of his map, right, which don't have chaff to be able to pin this down. I hope that you like this. I hope it was kind of informative as to how you have to play Elite, right? You have to realize, okay, this is my best chance at success. These are the units that are going to benefit the most from levels which I can still afford, and then from there on, try and make some plays. If you like the video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think of Elite Spec. Is it one of your favorites as well, or do you really struggle with it? If you want to see me play live, please do check me out on Twitch. And with that being said, take care and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.